I was house-sitting for a coworker. That's how this all started. Her name was Janelle. She worked the pharmacy counter with me and had to fly out last minute for a family emergency. Her sister had gone into labor early. She was in a bind and needed someone to feed her 2 cats and keep an eye on the place for a few nights. I'd never been to her house before, but I'd seen pictures. It was a modest 1-story place just outside the city, ranch style, detached garage, wood siding with faded blue paint. Nothing fancy, just tucked away in a quiet pocket of older homes. She gave me the key, her garage code, and a rundown of her cat's feeding schedule. That was it. The plan was for me to sleep over from Thursday night to Sunday morning. Easy. What's crazy is that even now, I can't fully explain what went wrong. But something definitely went wrong. The first red flag was subtle. I pulled into the driveway Thursday evening. Everything looked exactly like the pictures. Same mailbox, same ceramic frog statue by the door, same overgrown bush near the garage. I punched in the code she gave me and heard the click. The garage door opened halfway before jerking to a stop and then reversing. I tried it again. Same result. Okay, no big deal. Old garage motors can be fussy. I used the front door instead. The key worked perfectly. I stepped inside and was immediately hit by that old house smell. You know the one. Drywall, dust, maybe a faint hint of mothballs. The place was dim but warm, not creepy at all. I found the cats right away. A gray tabby and a black and white one. They both looked up from the couch like, "Oh, you're not Mom," but they didn't run, which I took as a good sign. I fed them, unpacked my stuff, and settled in. That night I fell asleep watching Netflix on the living room couch. But at some point I woke up, not to a noise, but to a feeling. You know how you can just tell when something's wrong, like the air pressure shifts, or your body knows something your brain hasn't figured out yet? That's what it felt like. I sat up. The TV had gone black. The house was silent, the kind of silence that almost rings. Then I heard something, faint. Click. It came from the hallway. I froze, my ears straining. Another click, closer now, like a light switch being flipped, but no lights turned on. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I aimed it down the hall. Nothing, but both cats were now standing. Their tails were stiff, and they were staring at the same hallway. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. I got up slowly and walked toward the sound, trying to ignore the prickling at the back of my neck. The hallway had 3 doors, bedroom, bathroom, and a guest room. I opened each one. Empty. No windows open, no signs of anything out of place. I chalked it up to nerves. New place. Late hour. Maybe an appliance made a weird noise. I locked up, turned on a hallway nightlight for comfort, and went back to sleep. The next day was normal. I went to work, grabbed dinner on the way back, fed the cats, and turned in early. This time, I slept in Janelle's bed. It smelled like her perfume, light, floral, not unpleasant. I must have fallen asleep around 11. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. This time, it was a sound, a rhythmic thumping, soft but deliberate. It was coming from above me, from the attic. I laid there frozen, staring at the ceiling. The cats were now both on the bed, rigid as statues. One of them gave a low, breathy growl. My chest tightened. I didn't even know the house had an attic. I got out of bed slowly, slid on my slippers, and tiptoed into the hallway. I looked up. There it was, a square attic panel, barely visible against the popcorn ceiling. No ladder, no obvious way to reach it. And then, I heard a scrape, like something heavy being dragged across the beams above. I whispered, "Is someone up there?" Silence. I turned off the hallway light and just listened. And then I swear to God, I heard someone whisper my name, not loud, not angry, just a whisper right above my head. "Marissa." I bolted. I grabbed the cats, keys, phone, everything I could carry, and ran to my car, heart slamming in my chest. I didn't stop driving until I got to a gas station 20 minutes away. I sat in the parking lot, breathing like I'd run a marathon. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Janelle. "Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "I think someone's in your attic." She didn't reply right away. When she did, it made my blood run cold. "What attic?" That's when I started piecing it together. The garage didn't open. The cats were familiar, but not identical to the ones she showed me in the photos. The key worked, but she never said her house had a ceramic frog by the door. I opened Google Maps. I typed in the address she gave me. It was 2 blocks away. I had been in the wrong house. I called the police immediately, told them everything. They met me back at the correct house, Janelle's actual house, and took my statement. I explained that the house I'd been staying in was unlocked, that the key worked, that I'd fed the cats, slept there, even showered. They were understandably confused. So was I. They asked if I was certain no one else had been there. I told them about the attic noises, the whisper, the name. I'll never forget the way the officer looked at me, like he was trying to decide if I was lying or having a breakdown. Then he radioed for backup. They approached the house I'd stayed in, quietly, tactically, and cleared it room by room. It was empty. They opened the attic, also empty. But in one corner, they found a makeshift cot, a few old food wrappers, a bucket, and a small stack of photos of me, sleeping, on the couch, in the bed, from behind a cracked door. They never found whoever had been up there. The house I'd entered belonged to a man who died 6 months prior. It had been in probate limbo. No one was supposed to be living there. No family, no tenants, no utilities. But someone had been squatting inside and watching me. The police think whoever it was had a copy of the old key. Maybe a former tenant, or someone who used to do maintenance and kept a set, but they couldn't explain why the garage code still worked, or how the key fit the door perfectly, or why they seemed to know my name. Janelle didn't blame me. Honestly, she was mortified. She never thought someone would accidentally walk into a stranger's house using the wrong address. We joked about it for a while, dark humor mostly, but neither of us really laughed, not after what was in that attic. I've since moved apartments, changed my phone number, bought cameras, but I still wake up at 3:17 sometimes. Every now and then, I swear I hear someone whisper my name from inside the walls. I was 22 when this happened. I just moved back home after college. Couldn't afford rent in the city anymore and figured staying with my dad for a few months wouldn't be the worst thing. He lives in a quiet neighborhood, kind of in between rural and suburban, one of those places where your neighbors wave but you never really talk. My dad works nights, he's a long-haul trucker, and he was on a 2-week route when this all started. So for that whole stretch, it was just me in the house. The first few nights were uneventful. I was enjoying the quiet, honestly. I'd stay up late, catch up on movies, cook my own meals without anyone judging my snack choices. That kind of peace was rare. The only weird thing, and I didn't even clock it as weird at first, was the sound on the roof. It started the 3rd night. I was watching something on Netflix, don't even remember what, and I heard this faint thud above me. Then a slow drag, like someone was crawling or shifting their weight on the shingles. I paused the show and listened. It stopped. I figured it was raccoons. We get those sometimes, especially if there's food in the trash, so I didn't think too much of it. But it came back the next night, and the one after that. Always between 1:30 and 2 a.m. Same sequence. Thud. Drag. Stop. I texted my dad about it. He said I should toss some bleach on the trash bags and not to worry. The fifth night, I got up to actually check, grabbed a flashlight, went out back, and aimed it at the roof. Nothing. No sounds, no movement, but as I turned to go back inside, I heard it again, soft, deliberate scraping right above the living room. I ran back in and turned on every light I could, and I swear, just before I shut the back door, I heard what sounded like a breath from above. At that point, I was pretty freaked out. But again, I rationalized it. I told myself it had to be some animal, probably a possum or something. The next night, I decided to ignore it, put on headphones, watched YouTube until I passed out. Around 2:45 a.m., I woke up. No sound this time, but my bedroom window was unlocked. I hadn't opened it in days. I'm certain of that. The screen was still in place, but the latch was slid open like someone had been testing it. My room's on the second floor, mind you. There's no balcony, no overhang, just siding. The only way someone could have reached it was from the roof. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe I hadn't locked it all the way. Maybe it popped loose on its own. I got up, locked it again, and went back to sleep, if you could call it that. The next day, I checked the perimeter. I didn't find anything. No footprints, no ladder, no scuff marks. The grass was untouched. I even asked a neighbor if they'd seen anything weird lately, but he just shrugged and said no. That night, everything changed. It was a little after 2 a.m. I dozed off on the couch. The lights were off. The TV had gone to the sleep screen. I woke up to that sound again, only this time it wasn't on the roof. It was in the attic. I froze. Thud, scrape, thud. It was directly above the living room ceiling. I stared at the attic door. It was one of those pull-down types with a string. I couldn't see if it had been moved, but the air in the room felt different, heavier, like someone was holding their breath with me. I didn't move. Then I heard it again, this time coming down the vent. A whisper, just one word. Hello. I jumped up and ran out the front door barefoot, keys in hand, phone forgotten on the couch. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, shaking. Eventually, I drove to a 24-hour diner just to be around people. I didn't go back in until the sun was up. When I checked the attic, nothing was there. No signs of animals, no footprints, no loose boards. But there was something else. On the attic floor, right under the vent that feeds into the living room, someone had dragged a chair, a folding chair. One we kept stored in the garage. It had been placed perfectly under the vent, as if someone had been sitting there, listening. I called the police. They came, did a sweep of the house, but there was no sign of forced entry. No fingerprints, no sign that anyone had even been up there, except for the chair. The officer said it was probably just me being paranoid. Maybe I brought the chair up there and forgot. Maybe it had always been there. I didn't push back. But I knew. I didn't bring that chair up. And I sure as hell hadn't been whispering through the vents. I stayed at a friend's place the rest of the week until my dad got back. He didn't find anything either, but here's the thing that still eats at me. About a month later, our neighbor, the one I'd asked if he'd seen anything, was arrested. Apparently, his niece had gone missing while visiting. They found her phone stashed in his garage, along with photos, hundreds of them taken through windows, bedroom windows, living room windows. One of those photos was of me, sleeping. On the couch, time-stamped 2:36 a.m. That was the same night I heard the whisper, the same night the window was unlocked. They say he was a recluse, that he'd had mental issues for years, that his family suspected something was off but never enough to press. They never found his niece. And as far as I know, they never found anything else in his house tying him to mine. But here's the part that sounds fake, too fake to be true. After he was arrested, the roof noises stopped. But every now and then, when the wind's just right, I swear I still hear someone dragging their feet above me. And once, just once, I could have sworn I heard a breath through the vent. This happened 2 years ago when I was living in northern Michigan. I'd just gone fully freelance and rented a small cabin outside of Marquette. Cheap rent, barely any neighbors, lots of trees. My goal was to isolate, focus on work, and get my mental health back on track after burning out in Chicago. I didn't think I was the cabin in the woods type of guy, but honestly, I loved it. The place was tiny, just 2 rooms, but it had a cozy fireplace, big windows, and no landlord breathing down my neck, no traffic, no sirens, no people yelling outside at 3 a.m., just birds and wind and the occasional squirrel thumping across the roof. It felt like peace. For the first few weeks, I barely left. I was designing logos, editing client videos, even trying to learn Blender for fun. The place didn't have great cell service, but the Wi-Fi worked just fine, and that was all I needed. The only thing I didn't like was the window. It was this giant picture window that took up almost the entire front wall of the cabin. From the inside, it was gorgeous. Tons of natural light, great views of the pine trees. But from the outside, it was like a stage. Anyone walking up the dirt road could see right in. No curtains, no blinds. Just me sitting at my desk like I was in a fishbowl. I planned to install a curtain rod eventually, but I kept putting it off. Big mistake. It started with a shadow. I was working late one night, probably close to midnight. The cabin was dead quiet except for the tapping of my keyboard. I'd turned off all the lights except the one on my desk. Outside it was pitch black. No moon, no stars, just my reflection in the glass. But then for a second, my reflection shifted. I saw movement behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat. Nothing there. I got up and checked the front door, still locked. Peered out into the trees, nothing but blackness and wind. Probably just my imagination, or maybe the flicker from the desk lamp. I sat back down and tried to ignore the unease curling in my stomach. The next night, the motion light went off. I was brushing my teeth when I saw it flash through the window, bright white light flooding the porch. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth. Waited. Nothing. I stepped to the window and looked out. The porch was empty. The trees were still. No animals, no person. I told myself it had to be a deer or raccoon, but the sensor was mounted high, human height. It didn't go off again that night. I finally bought blackout curtains the next day, put them up that evening. I slept better than I had in weeks, until 4:11 a.m. That's when I woke up, not to a noise, but a pressure. Like something was hovering inches from my face. I turned over and stared into the dark. Then I saw the curtain move, just slightly, like a breeze had caught the edge, except there was no breeze, and my windows weren't open. I lay there, frozen, staring. The curtain stopped moving. Silence. I told myself it had to be a draft. Maybe the heating vent kicked on, but all night I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me. The real turning point was the knock. It was a Wednesday. I remember that because I had a Zoom meeting earlier and wore an actual shirt for once. Around 9:30 p.m., there was a knock on the window. Not the door, the window. That huge picture window facing the woods. 3 quick taps. I jumped so hard I nearly knocked over my coffee. I waited. Nothing. Another knock. 3 taps. Even, deliberate, not forceful, but not tentative either. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the curtain, willing myself not to rip it open. And then, silence. No footsteps, no retreat. Just gone. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I finally got the courage to check outside. I walked around the porch. Nothing unusual, no footprints in the dirt, no smudges on the glass, but then I saw it. Under the porch, tucked into the space between the floorboards and the foundation, was a Polaroid, face down. I picked it up, heart pounding. It was a photo of me, taken from outside, through the window. I was sitting at my desk, head turned toward the screen. I didn't even remember that moment, but the timestamp in the corner said, 11:53 p.m., 2 nights ago. My mouth went dry. Someone had been out there, watching, taking pictures. I called the police. They showed up, took a look around and asked the usual questions. No cameras, no neighbors nearby, no clear signs of trespassing. They filed a report and told me to keep the place locked up, but I could tell they didn't take it seriously. One of them even said, probably just a prank. A prank? There was nothing funny about it. I set up makeshift security after that. An old webcam pointed at the porch, a door stopper, even a cheap noise alarm from Walmart. Every night I slept with a kitchen knife on the nightstand. And for 2 nights, nothing happened. But on the 3rd night, I woke up again. This time to the sound of breathing. Not loud, not raspy, just breathing. I sat up slowly, heart hammering in my ears. It was coming from behind the curtain. I reached for the knife, not blinking. Then, another sound. Not breathing anymore. Laughter. Software muffled, right outside the glass. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen, praying I was dreaming. Then the curtain shifted again, just a ripple. And then, silence. I didn't check the window until sunrise. When I finally pulled the curtain back, there was nothing, except a second Polaroid. This time, it was a photo of me sleeping, taken from the same spot. But this time, there was something else in the picture. A faint, human-shaped reflection in the glass, just outside the frame. I left that day, packed everything I could fit into my car and drove straight back to Chicago. Didn't even tell the landlord. I sent him the keys in the mail and said the cabin was his problem now. I moved into a 3rd-floor apartment in a busy neighborhood. Cameras, alarms, deadbolts. I haven't seen another Polaroid since, but sometimes, late at night, I swear I still hear tapping. 3 quick knocks, coming from the windows. But when I check, there's never anything there, just my own reflection, looking a little more tired every time.